Right, evening everybody. It is still Friday I've already forgotten what the date was. 16th of September, I'm going to guess at. Was it the 16th? Yes, it was. It's still Friday the 16th of September. It's still Friday. It's not the end of the weekend yet. So I have just done Stewart's Cream of the Barley. So we're now going to do another cream whiskey, which is this one. Now the label is actually a little bit knackered, but it is Teacher's Highland Cream. So this particular miniature was part of the acquisition of miniatures and a few bottles that I got essentially handed to me to try and sell some and keep the rest for the challenge and also anything. Now this is the most recent bottle of Teacher's that I was able to get. So this, I think this is from about 1980s, maybe mid 1980s. So it's a fairly old bottling, but I'm quite confident that it's going to be okay because the fill level is very, very good indeed. There's something fluttering about in there. Oh, blimey, that is an absolutely enormous daddy longlegs. That is a monster. So if I get attacked and I suddenly dive off camera screaming, you'll know exactly what it is because it's about that big. It's huge. So I might have to go bash it in a bit if it starts flapping around my face. So yes, so Teacher's, this bottling I believe is about the sort of mid 1980s. I'm confident though that it's going to be okay. But this is what the bottle looks like now, and I think it has just had a new packaging change, launch, whatever you want to call it, rebranding, because this one is on for sale at Master of Malts, but if I look somewhere else, I don't think the whiskey's changed, but in a couple of other places it looks to be a different bottle, which I'm sure I've seen before. So I think it's just been rebranded yet again. So Teacher's, not as you might think on the name, created specifically for people that teach children, and as fantastic a job as they do, and they probably deserve as much whiskey as they can get, particularly knowing my kids, one of who's which at school, and having to deal with her, let alone another 25, 30 kids as well. It's not made for teachers. It's actually after a gentleman called William Teacher, who was born in 1811 and was working at a grocery store in Glasgow, which is here. And he married the grocer's daughter and didn't become a partner, but basically had a much bigger role in the company. And in 1834 started selling whiskey in the store. So he was acquiring whiskey, he was blending himself, all this lot, and really got into it. And in 1856 acquired his own license for, I think it was a license for consumption of whiskey. And he opened what he called a dram shop, which became extremely popular and eventually became a chain of 18 different dram shops. At which point he was essentially the biggest license holder in Scotland. Now, by the time he died in 1876, his two sons, William Jr. and Adam, were already running the company, and they launched their own range of whiskies. There was a couple of different styles. There was a something cream, I can't remember what it was, and there was one that was called liqueur, but it wasn't a whiskey liqueur. But Highland Cream, out of the range of whiskies they did, became the most popular, and it was the one that became the flagship brand, and is the one that we now know. So in 1898, in order to secure supplies of whiskey for their blend, they built and opened the Ardmore distillery, which has been covered earlier on in the challenge. Again, can't remember what number it is, so have a search through, just search bar Ardmore Dram A Day in YouTube and you'll pick it up quite quickly. They then acquired Glendronach as a company actually in 1957, which was another part of we need the stocks because it's doing so well. And then in 1962, they opened a blending facility in Glasgow, basically a blending and bottling facility. Now in 1976, they were taken over by Allied Breweries, who became Allied Domecq. By the time we get into the 80s, so we're looking at mid-80s, Teacher's was actually the second biggest selling whiskey brand in the UK. It was absolutely huge, and at the moment it's the third. You're basically looking at Bell's, Grouse, Teacher's. That's your top three. Blended whiskey in the UK, done and dusted. And I think Bells and Grouse are fairly close to each other, and there is a bit of a drop to Teachers, not massively so, but it's essentially these three brands have got the market sewn up. Apart from kind of like your really cheap end of blended whiskies like Scottish Leader, which tends to be like rock bottom prices and in bars and things like that as well. So Allied Domecq were split up in 2005, yeah, they basically broke apart, and Pernod Ricard took some and Jim Beam took some of the rest, and Jim Beam acquired Teachers and Ardmore Distillery. It's now part of Suntory, so it's Beam Suntory, and these are the owners of Teachers. So Ardmore is the key, and Ardmore, it's quite a smoky Ardmore that they use. But as I was saying with the Stewart's Cream of the Barley, and I can't remember if I've had Teachers. If I've had Teachers before, it's been donkeys years ago, and I think it's similar to Grouse and Bells and things like that. It's been my inherent snobbishness. Reb Mordecai, or like that. It was a word that I made up, snobbishness. It's basically where I say that I'm snobby, but I also turn into Sean Connery. It was this inherent snobbishness of, I don't want to drink Bells, I don't want to drink Teachers because it's cheap, it's everywhere, and I want to drink the good stuff. And if I've had Teachers, I genuinely can't remember anything about it. Now, this is obviously a 1980s bottling, so it is entirely possible that over the years, the recipe, the production methods have changed. They've sort of moved slightly slowly into a different flavour profile. So this could well be not massively different, but it could be considerably different to what you will find on the shelf. But hopefully it will give you an indication of whether you think it's worth picking up a bottle or not. Now, what I found is also, when I've done Bells and I've done Grouse, is that people have been commenting back saying, well, you know, actually, I've got a bottle of this, or this is kind of the one that I go to when I want a cheap bottle of whiskey. So it's no shame in saying, actually, you know, yes, Teachers, I love the stuff, that sort of thing. And it's, you know, as I found with Grouse, actually, I would happily kind of buy it in a pub or anything like that. So I am, after the experiences with Bells and Grouse, I'm willing to give this every chance, because I've been very pleasantly surprised so far with the big name brands that I previously wouldn't have touched with a barge pole, and actually they've been pretty good, they've been all right. Now, what a strange nose, because it is slightly creamy on the nose. And there's grain there, there's juicy grain, sort of slightly edgy. Again, blackcurrant is always the thing I go for, blackcurrant, but it's like a blackcurrant concentration. It's a really kind of juicy blackcurrant, blackberry feel to it of grain whiskey that I get. It's something I always associate with Irish whiskies as well, which won't be long until we're getting into that run as well. But there is a slight creaminess and there is a slight maltiness to it. It's not too bad on the nose, actually. It's not heavy, it's quite light. It's not too intense, but it's 40%. And to be honest, it noses like it's 40%. There's not a great deal on the nose, but what is there is actually pretty pleasant. It's light, but it's nice and it's pretty well balanced. And it's that on the palate as well. It's quite light. There's a little bit of woodiness coming through, just a touch. But it sort of works. It's actually balancing the flavours quite well. It's complementing. It's not too woody. It's not kind of cutting through. Decent mouthfeel. Not as creamy as the cream of the barley that I've just had. It's a little bit lighter. It's a little bit fresher. Now, whereas the Stewart's cream of the barley was Cranachan, and thinking back about that, what I've just done, it really was a kind of progression of my head doing a tasting, going, I'm getting this, oh, it tastes like this, oh no, actually, we've gone into this is what it is, and I can't taste anything else but that. This is less Cranachan and more lemon meringue pie. There is a definite lemon sweetness, but it's not a sharp lemon. It's a very, very soft, sweet, gentle lemon curd along with the meringue. It's the meringue that's giving you that creaminess. It doesn't quite have the pastry base. It's more lemon meringue pie, but not the pie bit. It's just the lemon meringue. So you're kind of eating the topping, getting a spoonful of meringue and lemon curd, but not getting any of the pastry base. It's light, it's a bit fresher as well. But there is a decent mouthfeel of, there's a richness to it, which reminds me of meringue and lemon curd. It's that slightly thick mouthfeel that you get with it. But there is a definite, very gentle, sweet lemon feel to it. And it's not lemon sherbet even, it's definitely lemon curd. It's that kind of very sugary, gentle lemon feel to it. Again, the wood's kind of counterbalancing, but it's actually working with it. It's not a juxtaposition. This is an oakiness that's just lifting it, and it's more at the finish as well. It just lifts it back up. It's sort of gentle, it's softly sweet, and then this oakiness comes in just to kind of remind you, you're drinking whiskey here. And oak is involved. It's pretty good actually. It's not massively complex. It's very easy drinking, and I can see why it's so popular. Would I go back to it? I don't think there's quite enough in it, this particular one. Now it could be that the bottle that you would pick up on the shelf actually has a bit more to it. It could be that they've developed the flavour profile and they've actually introduced a little bit more, because I think with a bit more weight behind it, it would be a very, very good blend indeed. As it is now, this particular bottle from the 1980s is decent. It feels like it's lacking something, and it's not a particular flavour, it just feels like it's lacking body. It just feels like it needs a little bit more oomph just to really give you something to work with. But I can understand why it has become very, very popular, just being that easy to drink. It's very, very pleasant. It's got nothing harsh to it whatsoever. It's got everything that you would want in a whiskey, but it's just slightly sweeter. It's not quite liqueur, but I can see that element of sweetness just makes it a little bit more easy to drink and a little bit more enjoyable if you're wanting something easy to drink. It's not too bad at all. Now, out of the two creams, and this is, somebody did mention this the other day where they said, you're doing two every night, so it must be difficult not to compare the second one. And it is, to be honest, because you've just had one. There's always the thing with whiskey tastings. If you do a whiskey tasting, the first whiskey is always the hardest one to get any kind of judgment on, because everyone after that, you've got something to compare to. You've got something to kind of bounce ideas off and go, oh, right, well, this is sweeter, this is softer, this has got more smoke, that sort of thing. So by doing two every other night, the second one is always in danger of being compared to. But A, I can't help it. B, I think it might make it a little bit more interesting on the second one because I've got a bit more to work with. And on this case, both of them are called cream. They've got cream in the title. So it's quite interesting to do them side by side. And they both have an inherent creaminess to them as well. Now, whether that's because of the name, and I'm picking up on that and going, well, it's got cream in the name, it must have some creamy flavour in it. But actually, there is a creaminess to both of them. And I would give the edge to the cream of the barley. But teachers, I think, I'm actually interested now to go and find a modern day bottle of Teachers and see what it's like, because there's enough there that intrigues me to go, well, I wonder actually if it's better. So if I do see it in a pub, I am going to try it. And, that's as good an advert that could possibly do to make me go and try more Teachers, which is surely what they want me to do. Interesting. Right, the weekend starts here, even though it's quite late, so I'm ready for bed already. I shall see you at the next one. Cheers.